Howdy everyone, Tim back here again, and today we are, I'm going to show you how to play the blues, but I'm not going to show you just in this one lesson. It's going to be a series all on its own. Might be 10 videos or more, but it's just kind of a mini-series on how to improvise and what you need to know. So anyway, before we get started with any of this, and we're actually going to use the blues just kind of as an example of improvising and just kind of get your feet wet. This isn't everything to do with improvising, but just a little bit. But the first thing I want to go over today is 7th chords. It's just something we haven't talked a whole lot about yet in any of the classes or anything. So I just wanted to show you that to get us started. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. I think that would help. Yeah, it looks better. So anyway, we have common 7th chords. There are 5 major, not major types, but most common types of 7th chords. We have the major 7th chord, which is a major triad. You can build a major 7th chord on any note as long as you have a major triad, plus what we call a major 7th. Even though they're called 7th chords, they only have 4 notes, not 7. The 7th is called that because it's 7 notes away from what we call the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's where the 7th comes from. So anyway, we have a major 7th, which is a major triad plus a major 7th. A major 7th, if you had to define it, is a half step away from what we call the tonic or what we call the starting note. So we have C, E, G, B. B being a half step away from the C up an octave from the first note you started on. So you can make a major triad on any note. So here's a D major 7th chord. You have the D major triad plus the major 7th, which is a half step away from D, the note you're starting on. You can make an E major 7th, E major chord plus the major 7th. So if you're not familiar with major chords, look back at one of the other classes. I actually don't remember quite off the top of my head where I go over the different types of triads. It's one of the first ones, though. There are videos out there for that if you are confused. So this is more of an intermediate level lesson series, by the way. So if you don't know, I suggest you take music theories level 1 and 2 before taking this or looking at this series of videos. Some of the topics may overlap a little bit, but once you finish those two, especially music theory level 1, you should at least finish music theory level 1. You'll be ready for this series of videos. So anyway, you got, let's make an F sharp major triad. We have the F sharp major triad plus what we call the major 7th up top. A dominant 7th, to make a dominant 7th, all you need is you still need a major triad plus what we call a minor 7th, which isn't a half step away from the starting note octave up above. It's actually a whole step. So notice how the B flat is now a whole step away from C. And that has more of a bluesy kind of feel to it. We're going to be using a lot of dominant 7ths in the music we play. By the way, these are also, if somebody just says a 7 chord, like play a G7 chord, they're talking about dominant 7th most of the time. If they want you to play a major 7th, they'll say G major 7. But if they just say G7, which a lot of blues and jazz music does, they're talking about the dominant 7th. We'll talk this over in the next video, as I do have them labeled all as 7th chords. So anyway, you have the dominant 7th. You can make a dominant 7th on any key by taking a major triad. There's a G dominant 7, and adding a note that's a whole step away from G, the starting note that you're starting with. And then you can make that, on any note. Let's see. It has a bluesy feel to it, like I said. So just practice maybe finding a couple of dominant 7th chords by taking a major triad plus that what we call minor 7th. Now we have what's called a minor 7th chord. So this gets a little confusing because there's the triad portion and the 7th portion to each of these. A minor 7th has a minor 7th, or a minor triad, sorry, plus a minor 7th that we talked about before. Remember, a minor 7th by definition is a whole step away from the note you're starting on. Also has kind of a jazzy, bluesy kind of feel. All these will have a jazzy kind of sound to them, except maybe the half diminished and fully diminished later on. And you can make a minor 7th based on any note by taking a minor triad plus that minor 7th. Just like that. Let's go on to the next thing, which is half diminished and fully diminished 7. Make sure we're centered here. Yeah. Half diminished 7 is you take a diminished triad. Again, if you're not familiar with triads, look through my videos. There are quite a few on triads, but you have a diminished triad plus a minor 7th, which we talked about before. Remember, minor 7th is a whole step away from the note that you started on, the octave above the note you started on, sorry. So there you go. There is your half diminished 7th. Let's make another half diminished 7th. So here's a D diminished triad plus the minor 7th. Like that. So that's another half diminished 7th chord. A little bit crunchier than the other chords, a little bit more dissonant. And then we have the fully diminished 7, where you take a diminished triad plus what we call a diminished 7th, which, by the way, is 3 half steps away from the note you start on. So if you have a C diminished triad, you find C, an octave above the note you started on, and then you go down 1, 2, 3 half steps, and there you have it. Keep in mind that this note up here isn't A, it's B double flat. So you may be asking, why isn't it called A? Well, with chord spellings, whenever you're talking about any kind of 7th chords, or any kind of chord spellings, so say you have a D, any kind of D triad, it needs to be made up of these 3 notes, D in some form, an F in some form, and an A in some form. And what I mean by some form is either sharped or flat. Same thing with the 7th is, say we have a C 7, you have some kind of C, some type of E, some type of G, and some type of B. Well, when you make it a fully diminished, you need to keep that B a B. It may not look like a B, it may look like an A, but it's really a B double flat, and that's just how chord spellings go. So if you're kind of confused by that, that's just kind of the way it is. I think it's even more confusing to call that an A, because if you call it an A, that actually changes what type of chord it is. So it actually becomes some sort of F sharp diminished chord. So anyway, that's basically an overview of 7ths. The most important one you have to know is the dominant 7th, which is a major triad, plus a minor 7th. Remember, you make a minor 7th by, so say you have a C chord, you find the octave above it, and then you go down 2 half steps or a whole step, and that gives you your 7th, your minor 7th. So, and remember that dominant 7ths are often expressed as just 7. So A7 would be a dominant 7, B flat 7 would be B flat, D, F, and A flat. So that would be, yeah, so if it's 7, it's dominant 7. Just know that, and we'll talk about that more in the next video, so if you're a little confused, that's all right. And I suggest you watch this video more than once if you are confused, to go over it. And you can always leave me a message in the classroom, or like the little forum, the suggestion box, or the email. Email's good too. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Anyway, thanks as always for watching. This is the first video in a slew of them. I'm not sure how many. But anyway, thanks as always, and I'll see you for the next video. Thanks.